I never expected the ranch to feel like a turning point. It started so simply, my stepfather, Mark, asking if I could accompany him to the property for a few days. His usual ranch hand, Cole, had come down with a nasty flu, and with Mom planning a trip to visit her friend in Jasper, the timing worked out. He needed help with the animals, someone to haul supplies, and keep things running. I was on break from college, and honestly, I hadn't made any real plans. At first, it felt like just another quiet favor to help family. I said yes without a second thought. The drive out was long and winding, the sun dipping low behind pine-covered hills by the time we reached the ranch. Golden light painted everything in warm tones, and dust curled behind the tires like smoke. The place was a few hours outside of town, isolated and still, the kind of quiet you feel in your bones. I hadn't been here in over a year, but everything looked the same. The barn with its slanted roof, the little creek behind the corral, the porch swing that creaked in the wind. Even the smell of it, sun-baked wood, hay, and the faint musk of animals, felt like stepping into a faded memory. It was just the two of us now. No Mom bustling around the kitchen, no Cole sauntering out of the barn with his slow, southern drawl. Just me and Mark. I wasn't close to him when he first married Mom. I was 16 then, and honestly, a little bitter about her moving on so quickly after the divorce. But he'd been kind, patient, quiet in a way that didn't ask much of me. We had slowly built something respectful, if not exactly warm. But that first evening at the ranch, something shifted. After we unpacked and settled in, he made dinner, nothing fancy, just grilled chicken, baked beans, and roasted corn, but it was the way he did it. Calm, thoughtful, like he remembered what I liked. We sat on the porch afterward, watching the sky go from lavender to indigo, fireflies blinking in the tall grass. "You okay being out here?" he asked, glancing at me over the rim of his beer bottle. "Yeah," I said, tucking my knees to my chest on the swing. "I kind of forgot how quiet it gets. It's nice." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, peaceful." And then came the silence, the kind that didn't feel awkward, but full. Like there was more in the air than just the fading hum of insects. The next day, I started helping with the animals, feeding the goats, checking the chicken coop, even mucking out stalls. Mark showed me how to fix a sagging fence line, and when I dropped a wrench and let out a frustrated groan, he just laughed, shaking his head. "You're doing better than most of the guys I've hired," he said, tossing me a cold water bottle. "You're tough." Something about the way he said it stuck with me. Not just the words, but the way his eyes lingered for a half-second too long. I caught myself smiling later when I replayed it in my head. That night, I sat beside him on the porch again, closer than the night before. He didn't move away. Neither did I. By the third day, it started to feel like a routine. Coffee early, chores through the heat, lunch under the shade of the barn, then more work until the sky started to melt into orange and red. We talked more than usual. About small things at first, college, books, animals. But then, deeper things crept in. I told him how I felt stuck sometimes. How being 19 didn't feel like the freedom everyone promised. He told me about the early days of the ranch, before he met my mom. About his father. About feeling like he'd built a life no one really saw. It was strange. I saw him that way for the first time, not just as my stepfather or my mom's husband, but as a man who worked hard, carried the weight of responsibility, and had the softness in his voice when he talked about things that mattered. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The lines around his eyes when he laughed. The way he rubbed the back of his neck when he was deep in thought. The quiet steadiness in the way he looked at me, not sharp or assessing, but present, intentional. That evening, as I stood on the porch brushing out my hair after a shower, I caught him watching me. Just for a moment. But it was enough. He looked away first, and I realized something had changed. Not in a sudden, dramatic way, but in a quiet unraveling, like a thread being pulled loose in the fabric of something I thought was stitched up tight. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. But that night, when I went to bed, I left the door to my room slightly ajar. By the fourth morning, I woke up before the sun. The house was quiet, wrapped in shadows, and the only sound was the creak of the old wood floor as I tiptoed through the hallway. I found Mark already outside, coffee in hand, leaning against the railing of the porch, staring at the horizon where dawn was just beginning to break. "You're up early," I said, wrapping my cardigan tighter around myself. He turned, smiling softly. "Habit. Out here, the day starts with the sun." "Couldn't sleep." I shrugged, joining him at the railing. "Not really. Too many thoughts." He handed me his mug without hesitation. I hesitated for just a second before taking it, our fingers brushing. His hand was warm, rough from years of work, and mine felt small in comparison. It wasn't anything. And yet it was. We stood there in silence, passing the mug back and forth, watching the sky bleed from lavender into gold. As the days rolled on, the rhythm of ranch life seeped into my bones. It was exhausting work, but the way Mark gave me real responsibilities, trusted me to handle things without second-guessing, stirred something new in me. I felt capable, grounded, like I wasn't just helping, I was needed. And I noticed the way he noticed me. At first, it was subtle. A glance I caught when I knelt by the trough to fill it, only to find his gaze already on me from across the yard. Or the way he appeared beside me when I was struggling with a feed sack, too heavy, slipping from my grip, and his hand found my arm, his voice calm and close. "Bend your knees, not your back," he murmured, his palm steady at my elbow. Each interaction was small, easy to dismiss. And yet, I didn't. One afternoon, a sudden summer storm broke across the sky. We were out moving hay when the clouds cracked open. Rain poured fast, sharp and loud, and Mark grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward the barn with a quick "let's go." We stumbled through the downpour, laughing like kids, soaked to the skin. Inside, I stood catching my breath, rainwater dripping from my hair. Mark was grinning, his laugh bouncing off the rafters. It caught me off guard, the sound, the look of him, so carefree in that moment. My chest fluttered unexpectedly. "You good?" he asked, the smile still lingering on his face, but softer now. "Just wet," I said, brushing water from my cheeks. "I'll grab towels," he offered, already heading toward the supply shelf. He tossed one to me, slinging the other over his shoulder. As I dried my arms, I caught his eyes on me again, not staring but studying, noticing, as if trying to figure out when, exactly, I'd become someone he was seeing in a new light. Later that evening, after dinner, I stepped outside. He stayed behind, the sound of dishes clinking faintly through the screen. I sat on the porch swing, a blanket around my shoulders, breathing in the scent of damp earth and pine. A few minutes later, he joined me. We didn't say anything at first, just sat. The stars shimmered above us, the night thick with crickets, and the last scent of rain. "You're different now," he said quietly. I turned toward him. "Different how?" "When I first met you, you barely spoke to me. Now," he paused, "you've grown into someone else." I gave a soft laugh, uncertain what to say. "I guess that happens." He looked at me again, his eyes unreadable in the dim light. "It did. You have." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It hummed, like something new had quietly stepped between us, waiting to be named. Neither of us reached for it, but when I got up to head inside, he rested his hand lightly on my back. A simple touch, but it lingered. That night, I dreamed of open skies and rainfall, of hands brushing too close and long pauses that spoke louder than words. And when I woke up, I couldn't unfeel it, the shift. Like my eyes had learned to see him differently. After the storm passed, The sun returned heavy and golden. We spent most of the day mending fence posts in the far field, the heat clinging to our skin. By lunchtime, we were both drained, so we retreated to the porch with a pitcher of tea between us. I stretched out, feet brushing the edge of the boards. "We need a break," I said, letting my head rest back. "Something fun. No chores. No mud. No lifting anything." Mark raised a brow, amused. "Got something in mind?" "Cards," I said instantly. "Winner gets a wish." He gave me a sideways grin. "You sure about that?" "I'm not bad at poker." "I'm feeling lucky." I shot back, already up and heading for the deck in the drawer. We set up at the table by the screen door, letting the breeze play with the edges of the cards. It started off light, a few laughs, some very suspicious bluffing on my end, but then he kept winning. Hand after hand. By the time he laid down a flush, I let out a dramatic groan. "All right, you win. Name your wish." He tapped the table, pretending to ponder. When he met my eyes, there was a flicker of something playful. "Maybe more." "I want you to milk Daisy." I blinked. "You're joking." He shrugged, too innocent. "You said any wish. This is me using it." I narrowed my eyes, already standing. "I don't even know how." "I'll show you," he said, following me to the barn. The barn was cooler inside, thick with the smell of old straw and the warmth of animals nearby. Daisy, the old Jersey cow, stood lazily chewing her cud, unfazed as we entered. Mark brought over the stool and a metal pail, motioning for me to sit down. "Watch carefully," he said, crouching beside me and showing how it's done. Slow and practiced. I tried to focus, following the motion of his hands. When he finally nodded for me to try, I hesitated, glancing at Daisy, then at him. "She's calm," he said softly, reassuringly. "You'll do fine." I nodded and reached forward. At first, it didn't go smoothly. My grip was unsure, the rhythm off. I could feel my cheeks heating up as the pail stayed empty. Mark was behind me now, close enough to feel. His eyes were on me, and even if I couldn't see it, I knew it. "I think I'm messing it up," I mumbled, not looking back. "You're not," he replied gently. "You're just tense." But how could I relax with him standing so near? With the way the quiet seemed to magnify everything, the rustle of hay, the shift of weight, the warmth that radiated off him like sunlight through a window. I tried to concentrate, but when I glanced over my shoulder, I caught it. He was watching. Not casually, not absently. His jaw had gone rigid, and there was color in his cheeks. When he saw me looking, he quickly turned away, busied his hands with a nearby feed bag like it had suddenly needed his attention. I stood quickly, brushing straw from my pants. "I think that's enough practice." Mark gave a small nod. "You did good," he said, his voice a little rougher than before. We walked back in silence, one that pressed down like humidity after a storm. At the porch, he stopped. "I wasn't trying to make you uncomfortable," he said. I met his eyes, uncertain how to respond. His expression was quiet, unreadable. "It's okay," I said, though my voice came out too soft, too unsure. But it wasn't okay. Something had tilted, unspoken, but no longer unnoticed. That night, I lay in bed thinking about that moment, about the way he'd looked at me, and the way my heart had caught when I noticed. The sun blazed the next day, casting long, sharp shadows across the ground. I was curled up on the porch swing with a novel when I heard Mark call from the barn. "Could you bring some water?" I headed inside, grabbed 2 bottles from the cooler. As I stepped out again, I spotted him through the open barn doors, shirt clinging to his back with sweat, lifting hay bales in practice movements. His muscles shifted beneath the fabric, and I felt a jolt of something unexpected spark through me. I looked away, embarrassed. The air in the barn was thick with heat and hay dust. As I stepped in, I caught my foot on the warped edge of the door. The next second, I was stumbling forward, arms flailing, bottles flying from my grip, and I fell straight into him. He caught me instinctively, our momentum sending us both backward into a hay pile. My breath caught. His hands gripped my arms, steadying me. The closeness was dizzying. His scent, his warmth, the way my body landed against his. For a beat, we just stayed there. His eyes were inches from mine, searching, unsettled. "You all right?" he asked, voice low and hoarse. "Yeah," I managed, my voice barely audible. "Didn't see the step." He let out a soft laugh. "No kidding." We both realized how tangled we were, my leg pinned awkwardly against him, my hand still pressed to his chest, and his fingers still gently clasping my arms. The moment stretched, felt more than spoken. I scrambled back quickly, brushing straw off my shirt. "Sorry, I didn't mean." "It's fine," he said, cutting in quietly. "Just startled me." He sat up and passed me one of the bottles, our hands grazing. The touch was subtle, but it lingered. We sat in the hay a while, sipping water in silence, the barn hazy with dust and something else I couldn't name. "I really need to be more careful," I said with a forced laugh. Mark glanced over with a quiet smile. "You're doing just fine." But his tone was different now. Not teasing, not fatherly, just gentle. And something in his expression told me he wasn't just seeing the girl from before. He was seeing me now, and I felt it. Through the rest of the day, he stayed near, not hovering, not obvious, just there. He was always a step away. His presence felt more than seen. He'd offer help before I could ask. His hand would settle lightly at my back when we passed through doorways. Once he reached up to tilt the brim of my cap so I could see better. The way he touched me had shifted. It wasn't just helpful anymore. It lingered. It said more than it should have. That evening after dinner, I found myself on the porch alone. The stars had returned, scattered bright across a deep sky. The air had cooled, but my skin still carried the warmth of the day. The screen door creaked behind me, and I didn't need to turn. I knew it was him. "You've got something in your hair," he murmured. I raised a hand, but his was already there, fingers brushing gently through the strands, lifting a piece of straw from beside my temple. His touch was light, and it didn't retreat quickly. "You scared me earlier," he said after a beat. "When you fell." "I didn't mean to," I said, my voice barely audible. "I know." He leaned back then, only slightly, enough to return the space between us, but not enough to undo what had passed. The moment had been made. It lingered, quiet but undeniable. And I knew I wasn't imagining any of it. That night felt different. The air was heavy, charged in a way that hinted at a coming storm. Distant thunder had rumbled throughout the afternoon like a warning that never arrived. He was still outside locking up the barn. I was cleaning up the kitchen, moving on autopilot, when a sting suddenly flared across my stomach, sharp and unexpected. I gasped, my hand flying to the spot just above my waistband. It was hot, almost like a burn. Mark spotted me clutching my side and crossed the yard fast. "What happened?" he asked, worry etched in his face. "Something bit me." I winced, lifting the edge of my shirt. "Right here." He looked down where I pointed. "Come inside. Let me take a look." He led me to the couch with a steady hand, kneeling in front of me as I raised my shirt higher. His focus sharpened, his expression serious. "It's red," he said, running his fingers gently along the skin. "Could have been a spider. Doesn't look too bad, but I want to be sure." His fingers moved carefully, checking for swelling. His hand was warm, rough with calluses from work. I felt every inch of contact, the heat of his skin against mine, making my heart stumble in its rhythm. He glanced up, and we both froze. His hand was still there under my shirt. The air between us changed, thicker, heavier. His eyes held something now, something more than concern. I couldn't name it, but I felt it deep in my chest. "Still hurt?" he asked, his voice hushed. I shook my head. "Not really." But I didn't want him to pull away. He didn't, not immediately. His hand slid up, just a little, careful, slow, like he was testing a boundary we both knew was there. And then he leaned forward. There was nothing rushed about it. It was slow, cautious, like he was waiting for me to move, to speak, to say no. But I didn't. When his mouth touched mine, it was soft, uncertain, a question disguised as a kiss. I felt the press of his hand at my back, grounding me, and I kissed him back. There was no planning, no right or wrong in that second, just instinct, just the weight of everything unsaid finally rising to the surface. When we finally pulled apart, he didn't retreat far. He looked at me, truly looked, and his voice broke the silence between us. "I shouldn't have." "I know," I whispered. "Me neither." We didn't need to say more. Outside, thunder rolled low across the horizon. Inside, the world was no longer the same.